were a little bit awestruck that getting pregnant was not working.
There's a lot of people out there that have challenges having kids, and we had to go through IVF.
They had discovered a growth on your pituitary gland.
Oh, that's right. So they were kind of saying, okay, if we've got a lower count and Brittany has a endometriosis issue, there's not a lot of chances for success.
Right. There was a lot of shame that I could not get pregnant. What's wrong with my body? Why am I struggling?
The pituitary gland was enlarging, which that pituitary, I guess, regulates so many hormones.
So at 34 years old and 11 months, I went and did another round and it failed.
No eggs.
We had nothing.
Welcome to Good Neighbor Game Changers.
We're Matt and Brittany, here to help you love boldly, lead with purpose, and shift the atmosphere right where you are.
This is your place to get encouraged, equipped, and activated to live on mission.
It starts by loving our neighbors in life and in business.
This is Good Neighbor Game Changers. Grab your cup of coffee and tune in.
Welcome to Good Neighbor Game Changers. We wanted to finish out talking about why the number 10 is so important to us and tell you a little bit about our family.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a special number. We've had a lot of different connections to it through sports, our family, and jersey numbers, our anniversary date.
Coffee launch.
Our coffee launch was on October 10th. Yeah, which then kind of brings us to our first child, Tenley, Tenley.
Yes, I remember when we had met on the cruise ship that because we loved number 10 and even all of our family members were big fans of 10, that we kind of made a joke that, oh my gosh, well, if we ever had a child, we'd have to name him or her 10. And the Lord graced us first with our daughter, so we named her Tenley. And she is very well aware that she got named after our favorite number.
Absolutely.
And next year is her 10th birthday. So we are already planning a special trip. Of course, she is requesting Paris.
Oh,
so
Tenley turning 10.
Tenley turning 10.
Yeah.
It'll be a big one.
Absolutely. Well, and I think there's some fun there with that. But having children was a challenge for us. And, I think, kind of maybe what some of the things I wanted to talk on, there's a lot of people out there that have challenges having kids. And we had to go through IVF. And it's a real thing. And we kind of want to just encourage people and talk through that process. And Britt, do you want to kind of talk about the IVF journey from your perspective?
Sure, absolutely. We had first, I felt like we just really waited on each other for a while. We were well in our 30s when we met, and it was very unconventional how we met. And then, getting married on 10/10. And then immediately, I think because of our age, we were ready to start a family. And, being kind of the high achievers and very competitive people, just kind of growing up as an athlete, both being business owners, we were a little bit awestruck that getting pregnant was not working. And so I remember it was about 6 months and I thought, wow, this seems odd. And that was the first step we took, is going to the doctor. And getting, checked out. And I remember when we found a great doctor locally, and I remember them telling me that, well, it looks like there's some endometriosis, and especially really heavy on one side, which is probably affecting, your ability. It's not impossible to get pregnant with endometriosis, but it makes it more challenging. And I was not prepared to hear that. And then at the same time, because this doctor was really working strongly with the in vitro doctor that was in Missouri, actually, they decided to also get yourself tested. And then,
which I thought was a smart thing, because I feel like a lot of times they just go look at the woman.
Right.
They don't ever really check, do we have male issues here?
Right. The first piece of advice is I would make sure that both parties get tested, because you're right. I think that was actually a new thing back then, was to even contemplate,
Yeah. And I think when we talk about that, it's like, what are we doing from the male's perspective? It's going and getting what they actually call it. It's a sperm count. Is that what they call it?
It's a quality, making sure.
Yeah.
Because, remember how fascinating it was that at the same time this was happening, when we had discovered the news about your body, they had discovered a growth on your pituitary gland.
Oh, that's right.
And, you had suffered a few concussions in football. And this was something that we really had to stand in agreement
Yeah.
and believe for a miracle because it was affecting everything. And we didn't know it till you had this test.
Yeah. And if I remember right, the doctor had kind of described it. I don't necessarily remember if it was a growth or if it was like either shrinking or enlarging, one or the other.
It
Going
was
the
enlarging.
It was
Yes.
enlarging and it was
Something was growing.
and so the pituitary gland was enlarging, which that pituitary, I guess, regulates so many
Everything.
hormones and so many things throughout
So,
your
right.
body.
There was a little bit of a malfunction there, and they were linking it, "Hey, people who have had severe trauma to the head,
Yeah.
this is a byproduct."
Could have led to
And
some.
so, in the midst of us finding out, okay, we have really rare chances of pregnancy, we now have to deal with this consequence of you playing football, which you loved, and just it was so, like, heart-wrenching. But I remember at the time you had this gift of faith and was like, "I'm believing for a miracle." I'm like, "Yes, we are gonna have children, we're gonna multiply, we're gonna be fruitful, we're gonna have a legacy,"
Yeah.
and you received a miracle.
Yeah, that it was unbelievable. I went to the doctor and they kind of took a sperm count and it was lower than what
Mhm.
normal was. So they were kind of saying, okay, if we've got a lower count and Brittany has a endometriosis issue, there's not a lot of chances for success
Right,
because there wasn't as much sperm
right.
to get into a really hard spot within your body. And so I remember thinking, oh my gosh. And then we find out this deal about pituitary gland was kind of enlarged or enlarging. And I went back and all of a sudden it started to shrink. It
Mhm.
started to go back to normal size.
Mhm.
And it's so far beyond what I can even fathom or know. But there was a miracle that took place there. And then I was able to have more testing and they took my tests and then they said, okay, we think now got a bigger pool that we can draw from. And we had an unbelievable doctor here locally in Tulsa as well as up in St. Louis. And man, they had to start giving you though the shots. And that's the part I don't think people realize how much.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember sitting in the living or in the kitchen giving you these shots in your belly, and it's basically just steroids or
I it
you know
It was just
hormones.
a concoction of, yeah, synthetic hormones to mimic that my body, because it's one thing to try to get pregnant, but it's also another to try to keep the baby, and the baby is trying to grow, as if it was just a normal, the science of how to get pregnant. Our babies were created in a Petri dish, and at 5 days old, Tenley was a fresh embryo transfer, meaning they took your sperm and they took my egg, they retrieved it, and they put it together, and the strongest sperm won,
Yeah,
and 5 days she was in there,
this was
and
truly in a petri
yeah,
dish.
and already,
Yeah,
immediately, conception is immediate, like, the gender, the determination of her eye color, hair color, everything is immediate, and so at 5 days old, she was then put back inside of my uterus and for her to attach. And that
to put it in there like in a perfect spot because
of the
of the
endometriosis.
endometriosis.
Absolutely, and remember the light broke down? So
Yeah.
he had no light, he
Yeah.
all of a sudden brought this camera on his head to shine, and he's like, "Don't worry, everything's fine." I'm like, "Oh my gosh," and I just had to keep relaxed, and
Yeah,
we found out within literally, it was like a week,
a couple of days later, 4
and,
days.
because you get lots of blood tests, we found out we were pregnant, and it was just
It's amazing.
it
Well,
was
because
amazing.
so many people go through this and one financially,
Yeah.
I mean, it's an investment, but then they don't guarantee that it's gonna work.
No.
But the part I think that was amazing was before all of the putting in the petri dish, they go in and retrieve your eggs.
Yes.
And that was the part that was like, they were so excited. They were like, okay, we got 8 eggs that we were
Right.
able to get.
Right.
But then what they do is they continue to kind of watch them for hours and even some days, and some of them they become unviable.
Right. So we had 3 eggs make it, and only Tenley worked.
Worked.
We had put 2 in, and she made it,
Yeah.
and we had 1 other that ended up being what we call frozen.
Yeah.
And then that was not a viable one, which takes us to our next chapter. And by the way,
My
Tilly is
little guy.
amazing and she's beautiful and healthy and so strong, but we knew we wanted to have another child. So we realizing already just within 2 years, the technology of IVF had changed so much. And our doctor reached out and said, if you're going to have another one, we need to do more retrievals before you turn the age of 35 because there's a really big dip in quality of egg. And so I said, okay. So at 34 years old and 11 months,
Yeah.
I went and did another round and it failed.
No eggs.
We had nothing. And so they retested you and me, and you had perfect sperm. Do you remember that?
I do. Was
It was another miracle. So I said, you know what, Lord, maybe we're just going to get pregnant naturally. And we were going to do the retrieval just as, a backup per what the doctor was sharing. And so that's what we did. We ended up trusting. And I remember that day at the doctor, we were like, oh, crying, like, what? Like, we had success the first time. And now we did this and we had no eggs. So we did it again because I remember I did change my diet a little bit. And the doctor had said, please do not change your diet. Just make sure that your body is not in shock. And I was like, okay. So I just did normal and we were able to make 3 more embryos.
Yeah.
And so then those got frozen and we were waiting until the time to implant.
What did we wait? Was it around 6 months or so? Yeah.
But the very unique thing is then my body was not able to sync up to get the embryo implanted. And so that was definitely, I can see now, a really strong spiritual attack during that time that we were not able to move forward with that until we got breakthrough.
Yeah.
And it worked on the first try.
Yeah.
We put in Mateo,
little guy.
little Matthew.
Yeah.
And so we now have Tenley and we have Mateo, and they're about 3 years apart.
Yeah. 2 years, 9 months.
2 years, 9 months.
Yeah. And my brother and I are 2 years, 9 months apart.
Yes. Yes.
Tinley is 9 right now, and Mateo is 6. Yeah.
Yes.
And they're into all things. Tinley's a cheerleader. Tinley does softball, cheerleading, basketball. Mateo does football and basketball and wrestling.
And they're number 10.
And
They
they're number 10.
wanted to be number 10. So the 10 is living on.
It is unbelievable. Our children are, and I'm sure we'll get into other episodes about actually parenting, and we can kind of tell you our highs and lows there. But the journey to have our children was one that was not easy, but looking back, God's hand was on it.
Mm-hmm.
And we're blessed beyond imagination. And so I just want to encourage people out there that are going through IVF, just know that there is a plan and there is purpose, and you keep the faith, because if it's on the woman's side, the man's side, either way, it doesn't matter. But you can pray for a miracle, because I tell you what, we saw it happen in our life. And so I just encourage you to stay the course and watch what God can do.
Amen. One thing about IVF is, the doctor told me that day that I had an unlikely chance of getting pregnant. He says, I can get you all the way to as much as I can, but only God is the one in charge of sending, children to earth. Science cannot create the ability for an embryo to attach to my uterus. And so I knew that this was going to involve God, and it actually brought my heart to seeking him. And I'm so thankful for that, because in our marriage, we needed to really come together on this. And there was a lot of shame. There was a lot of shame that I could not get pregnant. What's wrong with my body? Why am I struggling? Like, that wasn't really a pattern in my family. So I was the first one that not only had I go through IVF, but also had to have a C-section, which I know we can maybe talk about the birth. And so it was very shameful. And it was a little bit confusing why this was happening. But if I move forward, and now I have hindsight, I was realizing we were dealing with a spiritual battle, and there was barrenness, and I had bitterness in my womb. And so that was affecting me. And obviously we know about Matt, he needed a miracle. And because we had to go this route, I believe we were discovering something that could have really been, a different story later on. But through that, the Lord used this, and he used it to bond our marriage. He used this to help others. He used this to really surrender the children kind of like Hannah did. I was just bitterly like, how is this not working? And I was really kind of petitioning with God, like, they're going to serve you. I want them to know you. And so now I can see God's hand in it. But through the journey, to be very honest, it was very bitter. But I just encourage you that barrenness can be broken, bitterness can be healed, and your womb is a very powerful place. And so I was being called to break things off of the bloodline, and this was showing me that there was things that needed to be dealt with spiritually. But I do believe that the Lord led us this way so that I would be aware of the things that needed to be broken off the bloodline. I needed to surrender my heart to him, because as an overachiever, everything that we did in our lives, we were just constantly prospering in just success. And this was the first moment
It was tough.
that we were like,
Boom.
we cannot control this. We do not know what to do.
Yeah.
And no one that we knew had gone through this.
Correct.
And it was very frowned upon with the people around us. We had to keep it a secret.
Yeah. Yeah.
Until the next time we knew
Yeah.
we're sharing this, we have hope. And we know
families
God
knew.
Yeah, well, yes, but I'm saying our friend circle, and that God's hand was in it.
100%.
We didn't put him in a box that like, oh, okay, I'm, manufacturing this. I knew that through this journey, he was guiding us.
Well, the people in the church have a lot of different says about this whole concept. And I always come back to the fact, hey, nobody's been in that situation. People making these comments, that they've never been in this situation.
Right.
Yeah, science has come a long way.
Mhm.
We are grateful for science. God has made these scientists.
Mm.
God has put his hand over all of these procedures.
Yes.
And the scientists do their very best, but the very moment that only God can do is when that egg attaches to your uterus.
Absolutely. It's like the science confirmed God. I learned so much about birthing, and it was just so interesting, as we can talk in the future, that I am called to be a spiritual midwife. And I learned all about every single moment that it takes. So it's been a powerful journey.
Absolutely. Hey, we really appreciate you guys tuning in today and listening. I know we talked about a lot of vulnerable things, and it was a vulnerable time for us, but I just encourage you, hey, let us know if there's something we can do to help you. Reach out to us. We've been there. We've been through this process. So stay strong, keep the faith, and we appreciate you listening today. See you next time.
Thanks for joining us today on Good Neighbor Game Changers.
If this encouraged you, hey, share it with a friend and keep the movement going.
And remember, real change starts with one act of love.
Let's keep changing the game by loving our neighbors.